Windows. Buy it or get a better one for free. 7 reasons why Linux is better than Windows. Today is a discussion of whether you need Windows or not. And welcome to the first Tech Tuesday. We bought a laptop and we were told it didn't come with Windows and that in 30 days we would have to purchase another Windows. I was a computer tech for 30 years, and I would imagine over the years I bought at least 1,000 laptop computers, and they all had Windows on them or some substitute. So I was surprised to hear this. So, before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. Well, speaking of videos, here we go. The purchase. We bought this at Abinson's. It's what we Americans call an appliance store. It has electronic gadgets, air conditioners, small appliances, and furniture. One of those kind of stores. The specs. Mary Lou and I had discussed the specifications that we wanted in our computer. We discussed the amount of memory, we discussed the processor type, and we wanted Windows 10. Which she picked, her choice, right on point. Exactly what we were looking for. During the purchasing process, the salesman set up the computer for her and told her that the Windows was temporary and it would only last 30 days and we would have to buy another one. So Mary Lou thought, well, we already have another computer at home with Windows on it, and Phil could maybe take that and put that on a new one. Yeah, he's a computer tech. He knows what to do. He'll fix it. And in that aspect, she was right. I knew what to do. Why would we have to buy another Windows? Well, to tell the truth, we would have had to buy a license for another Windows. A license is permission to use the program. The actual program, Windows 10, is on the internet and it's for free. The problem is, it's a 30-day trial basis. After 30 days, the functionality of your computer starts to decrease. It's unable to do everything that it could do initially. You cannot customize it, change the background colors, and just all the functions, all the little specialization things that you normally do to a computer, you can't do on an unlicensed version because it's limited. So it works really well for 30 days, and after 30 days, the functionality starts to decrease. You'll get a Windows watermark. In the right-hand bottom corner, it'll say something like, this is not a genuine version of Windows, or this Windows hasn't been activated yet. Something like that to make you feel insecure about your Windows. In addition to that, you won't receive tech support from Microsoft. Microsoft is a company that makes Windows. So if you have an unregistered version, you won't be able to call them up and ask them for help when you have a problem. In short, after 30 days, with an unregistered machine, with an unactivated machine, that's the word they use, activated, you will not have a fully functional computer. I'd like to say that today's fully functional computer is the greatest invention since the wheel. When you have a fully functional computer, you have the sum total of all mankind's knowledge at your fingertips. Everything that humanity knows can be found on your computer, especially if you have internet connection. If you have internet connection, you have localized the world. You've made the world a smaller place. You can talk, see, interact with anybody, anywhere, anytime, in real time. Yep, I call it the greatest invention since the wheel. So, back to resolving the problem. When we got the laptop home, I entered in a special code, and that code was to tell me if the computer itself had been activated, if this was a legitimate or registered copy of Windows that would last forever, or would this one start to limit itself in 30 days? I entered the code. Turns out that this was a legitimate version of Windows. It's activated and it's going to work. But what happens if it wasn't activated? What are my options? I could go to a computer store here in the Philippines and buy a copy of Windows for between 8,000 and 10,000 pesos. That's 160 US dollars, 160 to 200 US dollars. I could go online over to a place in the US and download a brand new copy of Windows, which would be unregistered, but then I could purchase a license, permission to use that Windows, and that would be about 140 US dollars or 7,000 pesos. If I were a student and my school had an official contract with Microsoft, I might be able to get that for between 500 and 750 pesos, 10 to 15 US dollars. But why do I need Windows? Windows is an operating system. It is the primary language of your computer. Your computer speaks several languages, but that's the primary. Without that language, your computer can't do anything. It just can't talk to itself and the other things around it. And it needs that language to talk to you because you don't understand any of the other languages that it speaks. An OS, operating system, which is what Windows is, tells your computer whether it is a Windows computer or a Linux computer or a Mac computer or an Android computer or any other type of computer. There are alternatives to Windows, and one huge alternative is something called open source. Open source is, let's say a guy's using Windows and everything's going fine, and then he gets very frustrated because he can't do what he wants to do. He says, heck, I'm going to go home and write my own OS, operating system. And so he does. He goes home, he writes his own operating system. He does a great job. And he calls it Doors. He's so happy, he shows it to his best friend next door. His best friend goes, hey, that's incredible. You know, it would be even better if we did this. And then his best friend shows him a couple of things, and they include that functionality into the program. Now there's a collaboration between the two of them. They both worked on it, and a computer program, the operating system, the Doors, is now better for it. And then they go to a third person, and he tells them the same thing. It would be better, but why don't we do this? And that third person contributes. And that's what open source is. It's a collaboration between many people. Linux is a collaboration. It started out as one person, went to 2, then 4, then 10, then 20, then 50, then 100. There are now tens of thousands of people working on Linux. And with that many people, it is now an excellent product. Just as Microsoft is a company that makes Windows 10, Linux is a company that makes Ubuntu, Mint, Puppy. There are at least 50 different versions, names for Linux OSs, Linux operating systems. So the products under the Linux title, Linux name, they're numerous, 50 or so. I'd recommend, if you're new, that you start out with Ubuntu. That is the simplest one, easiest to operate. Is Linux better than Microsoft or Linux better than Windows? Yes. And I'll give you 7 reasons why. 1, it's free. 2, it's more secure. People won't break in and steal your private information or steal your private pictures and post them on the internet. It has better privacy. They won't be taking all your secret information, your personal stuff like your banking credit card or what you buy when you shop on the internet or where you go when you take your phone somewhere because that tracks you places. They won't be selling that information, and certainly not at the level at which Microsoft and Windows does. Most of the software, at least 90% of the software that can be found on Windows can also be found available for Linux. And if that exact same company doesn't make a Linux version of that software, of that program that you're looking for, there's another company that makes a program or software that does exactly the same thing, but it might have a different name. So the software or programs that you buy can be found almost all the same, that can be found on Windows, can be found on Linux. Linux is just as easy to use. Just as easy to use. Linux requires less resources. That means a less powerful machine. And if you have a less powerful machine, then it costs less. And finally, Linux is faster. In summary, Linux is superior to Windows in almost every fashion. Overall, superior. You might be asking yourself, if Linux is so good, how many people are using Linux? On personal computers, consumer computers, computers that regular people use, like you and me, 77% of the people use Windows. 13% of the people use Mac OS or Apple computers. 6% of the people use Chrome OS or a netbook. And only 2% of the people use Linux. For a long time, Linux was complicated and it just didn't have the backing that Windows did. But I will tell you something else about Linux. In the world of supercomputers, those are the most powerful computers in the world used by scientists and multinational corporations. 100% of those run Linux. In the world of servers, professional computers used to run companies and run the internet, there's a 2-to-1 Linux to Windows differentiation. For every one company or person running Windows Server, there's 2 companies or 2 people running Linux. 2-to-1 in favor of Linux. You might say, if Linux is so good, why do so many people use Windows? Windows had a great start. Windows had money. Windows was a professional corporation. Linux was just a couple of guys sitting around in a garage, fixing stuff, working on stuff, sharing with each other. Eventually it grew to 5 people, 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people. And when it got that big, it became a successful product. In conclusion, free versus money, who won? Windows grew faster, but Linux is the better product. So there you have it. The answer to the question, Windows 10, buy it or get a better one for free? 7 reasons why Linux is better than Windows.